Got to go back to our guest line and welcome on the new head coach of the Syracuse women's lacrosse team for the first time on our airwaves as the head coach of the Orange women's lacrosse team. That is Regy Thorpe. Had the big press conference earlier today, and Regy, I'm sure it's still a little surreal this whole day and this whole experience, but what's the excitement level at right now as you're kind of formally being introduced today with a press conference and the whole thing?
Just so excited to come back to Syracuse, and back home, and love the name, the 315. It's great to be back in the 315. So just so excited for for my family, for the program, for the players, the alumni, and just so excited to get to work.
Absolutely. And you've touched on throughout this process, you've used the phrase dream job a lot. And it makes sense because of your ties to the school and your time as the associate head coach of the women's program when Gary Gait was the head coach. Can you speak to just how cool it is a little bit more to be back here in Syracuse and know that, this is kind of home for you, and this was always something you were probably thinking, maybe one day I could get that head coach job here, and now it has come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, to spend 10 great years here with Coach Gait on his staff and help him build and elevate the program, and then go off to the University of Florida for 4 years. And honestly, it was going really well there. And the only job I would ever even entertain of leaving the University of Florida is Syracuse, because it's Syracuse. It's home to Amy and I, our family, and just so passionate about the program, the history of the program, the tradition of the program. So, like I said, we couldn't be more excited. We've had a busy week and a half here getting things aligned, and it's recruiting season. So we're hitting the road and going out and find some future Syracuse women lacrosse players.
Yeah, we saw some news coming out yesterday. I don't think you can really totally speak on it, but you've already done a good job, it seems like, on the recruiting trail. Got a flip yesterday, at least it was reported, and Regy Thorpe is with us, the new Syracuse women's lacrosse head coach. What can we expect, Regy, once we do get to game time and you're out on the field, and what can we expect from a Regy Thorpe team in terms of the style that you want to play with and the type of game plans you want to throw out there?
Well, I think just continue on the past tradition. I think Coach Gait and myself both, cut our teeth, from the Roy Simmons Jr., kind of coaching tree, So we're going to want to play fast, play tough defense. But I think, on my end, it's the preparation. Our kids are going to feel, prepared. We're going to build confidence, and we're going to be tenacious. And I think from the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, we're going to be tough to beat. We got a really good nucleus of returning players. We're going to go out and work on a couple needs with the transfer portal, and hopefully land a couple kids there. But really excited about the returning players, but also the kids that were kind of those depth players, role players last year. I think a lot of those kids are ready to take the next step. So super excited for the families, for the players, for the fans. And, we're going to, again, just being Syracuse lacrosse, we're going to play once again one of the toughest schedules in the country. We're working out a few more details with the schedule, but more to come on that. But just, it's nothing's easy. So we're going to play a tough schedule and get us ready for May.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're following the Gary Gait model, it's always a tough schedule with him on the men's lacrosse side of things. And, of course, Kayla played all the best teams in the country seemingly every single year when she was the head coach on the women's side of things. So, it is got to be really fun for you just to be back around the program and back around Gary Gait, I'm sure. After the time you spent with him, you told a great story in your press conference about kind of the first time that you guys met and how that all went down and everything. And I imagine it's just cool to be around Gary, knowing how much he sort of has his feet in the women's program as well, and how much he cares about the women's program and is willing to help out in those areas. Yeah,
he's just been so supportive. I mean, Gary's just the ultimate, teammate, the ultimate player, the ultimate coach. So just to have him as back as a colleague, and to be able to bounce ideas off him, to help us, in any aspect, he's always willing to help, and that's Gary. He's just a class act, him and his family, his wife Nicole. So just so thankful to be back with him. be able to collaborate on some things, and again, just use them as a resource is just vital to the success of our program.
Can you give us an update, Regy, on where things stand with the staff? And it sounds like you're going to retain two great coaches that you already knew very well, and Maggie Cook, Caitlin DeFelice will be back as well. And I guess that maybe leaves the offensive coordinator position. Just where are things standing there, and how excited are you to kind of have two great returning coaches already in the fold?
Yeah, and I mean, my front half of my 10 years, I was with Maggie and Gary, and then the back half, I was with Coach Caitlin and Gary. So a lot of synergy there. We know each other really well, and kind of what each other does well, and what other coaches' areas that they might do a little bit better. So, but the university's just been super supportive, so we're able to go out and fill out our staff here, and working with HR compliance to over the next probably 2 to 3 weeks to get someone on board. Definitely more on the offensive side, and we'll work together. But super excited, and again, the administration and the athletic department have been very supportive.
And I know you were technically the defensive coordinator, right, or associate head coach as well down at Florida. And I think a lot of people view you as defense, but talking to some of your former players, they say that you're always involved in kind of all areas of the field, and you had your hand in the offensive side of things at Florida a little bit. Can you speak to that and how, yes, you're known as a defensive guy, and that kind of goes back to your playing days, but you also have your hands in the offense, I'm sure, a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a coach, as a head coach, you got to be versed in all the areas, right? Whether it's defense, draws, goaltending, offense. So again, very fortunate to have my 10 years with Coach Gay and learn so much, and take some of those best practices and approaches to all sides of the ball. So it was really fun this year to work with the Florida offense, and and still have a say in some of the defense and stuff, and then draws as well. So every year is a little bit different. Certain sectors of the field need a little more attention there. So I feel very confident with going whatever side of the ball I need to go on and help address and support and collaborate with the other coaches.
Also talking to some of your former players, and we had Morgan Alexander on these airwaves last week, and she was raving about you and how much she enjoyed playing for you. And Morgan's doing some really cool stuff in the broadcasting space now, which is awesome to see. But she brought up how you're kind of known for your pregame speeches, which that's been a running theme, it seems like. A lot of people are bringing that up. And also the pregame candy, I guess. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of the pregame candy or a ritual that started there?
Honestly, it goes back to Roy Simmons Jr. He used to bring us Big League Chew into the locker room and a couple snacks, and would throw them on the table there. So honestly, he started to do it with our teams here at Syracuse, and it was just part of the tradition. So when I started coaching here, I told Gary I'd like to bring back the tradition of having some gum and candy like Coach Roy Simmons Jr. used to put on the table. But honestly, Coach Simmons Jr. used to tell us, there's only, so many times in life you can act like a kid, right? And you can play the sport you love. So, chewing the bubble gum, being a kid, and just kind of playing free was kind of the theme, and why Coach did it. And just, I always continue that tradition, and still to this day, it's bubble gum and Starburst. And but again, it's just, it's a couple hours you can feel like a kid and play free, and take some pressure off, and get away from life, and play the game you love.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that. It sounds so much like kind of Gary Gates' thoughts on the men's side of things, which makes perfect sense for all the reasons we're talking about. And you think about Gary's teams, they obviously have the freedom to try anything they want out there. If they practiced it, they're going to try some crazy behind-the-back passes, behind-the-back shots. Is that kind of your thought process as well, that within means, you're willing to let your players do some fun stuff and get creative out there?
100%. I mean, it's a creator's game, and have fun with it, practice it, whether it's the BTBs, between the legs, hidden ball tricks. I mean, I think, the deception and being creative is the fun part of the game. And there's certain situations, that Sometimes it calls for better angles, going to BTB and that, but 100%. I mean, we're gonna be fun. We're gonna be creative to watch. We're gonna be deceptive, and hopefully have a little flair to our team.
Thorpe is with us. He is the new Syracuse women's lacrosse head coach, announced earlier today with the press conference, fourth coach in program history. And Regy, you've talked about it's a homecoming for you, so I got to know, what is the one thing that you really missed about Syracuse? Maybe a food spot, maybe Green Lake State Park, or, any of your favorite spots that now you're like, okay, now that I'm back officially, I got to make sure I go there as quickly as possible.
Well, I got to think about, I don't want to, I know we have different sponsors, so I'm looking over here at Susie, but honestly, like the signatures, the possibilities, the Hyde's hot dogs, stuff like that. I mean, those have been around for years, and when you're away, you certainly miss that. And then in the fall, right? I mean, the Beacon Skiff, apple farm, and going through there in the fall, and the pumpkins and that. So Amy and I really missed the fall, being down in Florida. And I think the fall is just the best part of, upstate New York, and it's so pristine. And but those are some places, and hopefully I don't upset any sponsors or anything, or maybe we get some future sponsors. Who knows?
Exactly. There's too many places to name that you always feel like you're leaving something out, but I'm sure you're excited. The food around here is great, regardless of who you shout out. It's I'm sure, good to be back and get some Syracuse food in your life. Anything else, Regy, before we let you go, in terms of something you want to give a message to the fan base about kind of what it means to be back in this job and what you're looking forward to getting things started here?
No, just super excited, to really, get the alumni back engaged. And I mean, that's the key. I mean, the men's side has so, they just have such a long tradition, and even the women's now, first started in 1998. So, I mean, just to get the alumni back engaged, be involved, and get them back on campus, and talk to our current players and network. And then the fans, just keep growing the fan base. I mean, Syracuse University's done an unbelievable job promoting our women's games, always top in attendance year in and year out. And then just really getting back to the community, and have a presence and impact in the community. And then, just excited to help build on the tradition and culture that was built here. But I'm really excited for this team, the 2025-26 season. I'm really excited for the kids coming back, and just to get rolling with them.
Yeah, you got quite the talented young core that you can build on already. So it's probably a dream scenario for a head coach to jump into. A lot of talent, great program, and, you being back in Syracuse really fits. So great to have you back in the area, and congrats again on getting the job. And we appreciate you spending some time with us today.
All right. Thanks so much, Tim. Thanks for having me.
All right, there goes Regy Thorpe, our new Syracuse women's lacrosse head coach. Great to hear from him, and you can tell he's excited, as he should be, to be back up here in central New York, and does seem like they are going to be in a good position to have a solid year this year. Already was kind of on the rebuilding trajectory, a lot of talented young players that hopefully will be back and kind of stick with the new regime with Regy Thorpe in the fold. So very exciting times in terms of what Regy will be bringing to the table, and I'm sure he's happy just to be back in the area and be back working with Gary Gate a little bit and be back repping the Syracuse Orange. So we will hit a timeout. When we return here on the 315, we'll do a little 411. Jordan will pop in and give us an update on some of the other things that we haven't talked about across the sports world to this point. That's all ahead. Stay with us here. It's QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.